and I met Jesus Christ. He was almost 10 years old, and he was helping his mother push a trolley full of all they owned. And because they couldn't find an inn they could get in, they were heading to the city and leaving Bethlehem. Couldn't you perform a miracle? I'm out of them, he said. I tried turning nothing into warmth, but it just made my mother cry. It just made my mother cry. Mary Magdalene has become a man, and tonight he's old, and she has been riding my tram. Now it's late and she's trying to sleep beneath a poster for a bank. Your dreams are important to us as it bathes her face in gold. Come give us your natural gifts, we make wealth from toil. Come pretend for history's page that we're advancing Australia fair. Let's pretend that we're all advancing Australia fair. Back down the road I found the church we built on the black man's bones was empty, and out the front a sign read all but sold. A sign read all but sold. And we all owe so much money, but to whom we're not quite sure. So head down, we just keep running along our fading golden shores. So head down, we just keep running along our fading golden shores. Come give us your natural gifts, we make wealth from toil. Come pretend for history's page that we're advancing Australia fair. Let's pretend that we're all advancing Australia fair.
Well, hello. Tonight it's a special treat. We have the one and only, the man, the doctor, the legend, one of the most trusted persons in Australia, several years running, here with us tonight on Cafe Lockdown. Cafe Lockdown, the free speech platform. As you know, we have a 3,649-day ban on Facebook. But you will find us on X, you will find us on Rumble, and you'll find our interviews, well, everywhere else. Well, without too much ado, let's get Charlie on. Hello. Oh, there you go.
That was a lovely introduction. Thank you, Paul.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, Charlie. A little bit about me. So I'm an Australian-born doctor like yourself. I grew up in the eastern suburbs. I went to Waverley College. You went to Scots. I don't hold that against you. I trained at Royal Prince Alfred. I went to Sydney University and then was a student there. And then before I became a registrar there, I actually spent time with Prince of Wales and Prince Henry as an intern and a resident. And so these were all part of my formative years. And and words of whispers of the legend of Charlie Teo had already was already permeating back then, and it was it was a different time, wasn't it? It was a different time. I remember as a resident, I got my first job in as an anaesthetic, resident, and the job of the anaesthetic resident was the most lowly job in the operating theatre. And I remember one time I was called in, and your job was basically to get the coffee and keep the. We didn't have the computers back then doing the printers, So your job was to just document the blood pressure, pulse rate, and the chart. And I remember there was one case I was called into in after hours, and it was a pediatric neurosurgical case. So there's a little toddler. I think maybe it was a shunt or something cranial, and Marion Vono had come in. And we breathed this little kid down and put in the tube. And then, as you know, the next order of business was to get intravenous access. You couldn't start the surgery without intravenous access. And I remember I had two very senior specialists, the head of intensive care at the time, and another senior specialist, and this baby didn't have veins. They must have spent nearly an hour trying to find intravenous access. I lost count, at least 20 goes each. And at some point, Marion, they said, go and get scrubbed. You're going to have to do a cut down first before we start the surgery. And I turned to them timidly, and I'd seen this tiny streak, almost like a capillary of blue on the wrist, tiniest blue capillary. And I said, "Do you mind if I have a go?" And I went pop straight in the first go. And it was like, by then I was so nervous about securing it. They said, "Paul, you've done, that's fine. Go have a coffee," And Marion didn't have to do the cut down. But that was my first inkling that maybe anesthetics is, maybe I've got some skill in this. And I did a term as a neurosurgical resident at Prince Henry, and back in those days, and I found it fascinating. It's the most fascinating specialty, but I realized that you do, the brain doesn't recover that easily. It is a, it is a brutal space, because there are bad outcomes. But I did think it was I thought it was amazing, And then I got on the scheme after a few years of, hard slog trying and doing my time in the backwater, and got on at Prince Alfred, and they loved me because I'd already had so much experience that, I was running the hospital after night. And I remember the neurosurgical anaesthetists were it was brilliant. And watching the neurosurgery and just the hours and hours of sustained concentration that was required, I developed a real respect. But I never really got those gigs in neurosurgical. I tended to be a generalist, and I always wanted to learn. I was always trying to make improvements. I was very focused on safety, because, as you know, I saw in an interview you were saying that in neurosurgery you make a mistake, the patient's dead. Same with anesthesia. You can kill someone in 3 minutes when anesthetics go wrong. So it was all, for me. It was all about safety. I heard that Johnny Larter mentioned about aviation, and I was like that. I was trying to introduce crew resource management and and simulation-based training for crises, but they weren't interested in the public. There was no encouragement, and that just got in the way. I was interested in difficult airway management, and I was adept-handed fiber optic intubations and all manner of different tricks for securing the airway. In my later years, I got into ultrasound. So, I thought, well, this is like a tricorder. I can actually see what the heart is doing. I can see the organs, I can make better decisions. So that's just a bit of an overview of, the sort of practice that I had. And in my own way, I was passionate about medicine, and God knows I did a lot of years of hard slog to get there, and then to have what happened, to be suspended for some social media posts, was pretty extraordinary. So I feel like in some ways, we're brothers. We've got some parallel history, and I think we're also maybe we both got this tendency to speak the truth and be direct.
Yeah, I get the same feeling. I mean, when I first met you and I first heard your story, I felt like we were brothers. But the major difference, of course, is that you successfully beat the system and I didn't. And I just feel like you're just a few levels above me in terms of your political nous, your knowledge, your medical legal knowledge, your strategy. Because I think if I'd done it right, I think I'd still be operating in Australia. And if I don't know, I wasn't a lack of courage. It was more a lack of knowledge, and I guess a naivety that I had no idea how Machiavellian the system was, and I had no idea how evil people were. I had no idea. I was so innocent and naive about the media. And Paul, I used to think once that the media always had to tell the truth, and they could, embellish it a little bit, and they could twist it a little bit, but inherently, there was always this core of truth behind every media article. And then for them to come out and make up complete lies and fabricate completely fictitious stories with no recourse except to sue them. And of course, the old saying, you should never sue anyone who buys ink by the barrel, holds true. And so, really, they do it without any recourse, without any sort of any sort of guilty feeling. That's what I learned. I learned that I was very, very naive, and I got the feeling, Paul, you weren't. And I got the feeling that you kind of knew how evil they were, and you knew how to attack them. So, I mean, that's the inherent difference. I had the same.
I don't think you lost anything. Because you stuck to your guns. You maintained your integrity, and what they did, the smear campaign and stuff, and the failure to take any action on it, the whole Henry Wu, stop Charlie Teo. I'll tell you, when I was at Prince Henry, I hated my term in urology. They were the most money-grubbing, least ethical doctors that I came across, and I got bullied by them too back.
Yes, and the trouble is, unethical doctors judge you by their own criteria of ethics. So if they're money hungry, they think all doctors are money hungry. So when they go to a website like GoFundMe and see people raising money for Charlie Teo, their immediate reaction is, oh, Charlie Teo is charging a lot of money. And because that's the way they think, and that's their criteria of ethics. And so they accuse you of charging exorbitant fees for these patients, when in fact most of those patients, in fact the two patients that were dragged through the HCCC Professional Standards Committee tribunal, one of them I didn't even charge. But that never came out. It never came out that in fact I did it purely for charity and because I felt sorry for the lady. But Henry Wu, of course, implied that I did it all for money, because I think, a lot of doctors do it for money. So anyway, look, it was all tainted and it was all terrible. I
think motivation is so important. when I started working, I spent a lot of time as a hospital doctor, on a salary. It wasn't about chasing money, and I don't get the sense at all that I can see how they distorted that. They don't realize the cost of the hospital, the cost of all the other parties involved.
Oh no, they did. No, Paul. They did realise that. They just wanted to. They wanted to project a certain narrative, and it wasn't in their best interest to talk about all the other costs of surgery, paying the hospital, the anaesthetist, the intensivist, the imaging. They knew that some of that money would go to them, but they just wanted to smear my image, and they wanted to paint me as being a money-hungry bastard. That's what they.
Do you know what you did with your life, which I regret that I didn't? Is all that work you did overseas. All those countries, and there's no question. I was a VMO, that you still have expenses when you spend as many months as you do. You're still paying for the premises and all the salaries, and you're going off and working pro bono. I had that aspiration, but I never got to do it.
It was more than that, Paul. I mean, how would a money-hungry doctor? Why would a money-hungry doctor spend at least 3 months every year doing pro bono work overseas, paying all those overheads, like you said? Why would they start a foundation for which they would have to work at least 3 nights a week and probably every weekend, at least one day every weekend, raising money? Why would some money-hungry doctor raise $51 million for a charity, spend all that time? I mean, it never passed the pub test. And I think that's why the public have been so nice. The public have been so supportive and so nice because, when you think about it, it just never quite passed that test. It just didn't sound right, didn't smell right. Everything was wrong about it. And of course, it was on the back of COVID where the public had lost confidence and lost trust in the medical fraternity. And then this happened, and it's almost like, that is so wrong on so many counts. So, the one good thing that's come out of this is that I think it's very, very hard to fool the public. The public really do know, when it doesn't sound right, it ain't right. If it just doesn't feel right, it's just not. There's something that doesn't smell right about it. Yeah.
But as you say, as one door closes, another one opens. And you've been able to continue to operate in Spain and in China. They built you a hospital, so you're fortunate. You can continue your skills and your surgery, and obviously the patients who benefit from it. I knew you. I knew you were a world famous neurosurgeon. I didn't understand just how many cases you'd done. Just
I keep telling people, Paul, how famous I am, and no one believes me. Like,
no, but it's a prodigious amount of 11,000 cases.
Look, I've done 11,000 cranial cases, and the average neurosurgeon does mostly spine. I'm sure you know that. And so they would do probably one tumor a month, I guess. They're the figures put out by the college, actually. So it's about 10 to 12 brain tumors a year that the average neurosurgeon does. Over a 30-year career, you're looking at about 300 to 400 brain tumors. And I would do that in a year. I've done 11,000. And at my peak, I was doing 10 brain tumors a week. And now in China, I'm doing at least 10 brain tumors a week, if not more.
How do you find China compared to the hospitals versus Australia?
I'm going to be speaking in hyperbole, I know, and a lot of people are sitting back going, well, fuck you, Charlie, just go back to China if it's so great. But okay, it goes like this. Just think of a country where there's no PC, there's no wokeness. It's all about getting the job done. And so, look, I know China has its problems. I haven't seen them, mind you, but, we're told they have their problems. But on a day-to-day basis, Joe Average would find China incredibly enlightening, refreshing, pleasant, and productive, because if you want something done in China, you just ask for it. They can do it. They do it. If they can't, they can't. And if you find a nurse who has done the right thing by your patients and you give her a big hug, you don't have to fear that you're going to be accused of sexual harassment. If there's a female neurosurgeon who is, again, helping you and doing the right things, you can buy her a gift and she can accept it without fear of being accused of sexual harassment or unprofessional behaviour. And I mean, just think of the olden days when you and I were lads, where we used to have those, Friday afternoon doctors' parties in the residence quarters, and again, there was no fear of retribution for being a normal, natural person. That's what China's like. It really is amazing. When the media over here asked my chairman over there, well, aren't you concerned that he's had these accusations made about him in Australia, and he's had restrictions placed on his license? And she goes, it's their loss and our gain. And she's been nothing but supportive. She's watched me operate. She's really, really kept a close eye on me and the way I interact with my patients, just to make sure that I do the right thing, and none of those fairy tales from Australia are true. And it's been incredibly refreshing operating in China.
I hate to do this, Charlie, but Paul's vanished. So,
Paul's vanished. Yeah, I know. Hopefully he can still hear me.
Yeah, hopefully he's trying to come on. But we're just listening here. It's fascinating what you're saying, because you're coming across as such a human being. You don't even have doctor next to your name.
Well, that's very nice.
That's what we're losing here. We're losing.
Well, it is. It's sad. I mean, it's sad what's happened, and it's sad what happened to Paul. It's sad what's happening to me. It's like, he was very kind to say, at least I'm still operating worldwide and saving lives, doing what I do best. But there is not a single day that I don't get, not melancholic, but I don't get upset, a little bit angry that I can't do what I'm doing for Australians. I mean, after all, I'm an Australian. I love Australia. I love the people. I love the support they've given me, and I would love to save lives in Australia. And, why can't I do that?
Well, you've given everything to us, and here we are, because you won't play ball. Suddenly they kick you out. And this is happening across the country to lots of different people. But how did it happen, Charlie? In your tenure, did you see it happening, or did you just suddenly wake up one day and realize, hey, we've lost so much?
No, you see, that's the good thing about this. They're saying that, no one likes bad news, but everyone hates a surprise. Thank goodness it wasn't a surprise. From the minute I came back from America, I had the medical fraternity against me. I had colleagues against me. I had them making up stories, and I virtually retained a lawyer from the minute I came back. So for the last 20 years, I've had a lawyer sort of writing letters and keeping the wolves at bay. And then about 9 years ago, a journalist in a very small newspaper printed a 4-page article on Charlie Teo and how terrible I was. And he claimed in that article that he'd interviewed about 4 or 6 neurosurgeons, and they all said the same things. And then he asked one of the neurosurgeons, well, why don't you get together and destroy him? And the neurosurgeon said, who wants to be seen as the person who kills Bambi? Okay, so that was the light that went on, because once that was written, it became very clear that you can't destroy someone who's doing nothing wrong. So what you've got to do is turn Bambi into a wolf, or you've got to turn Bambi into someone who isn't lauded by the public and isn't doing good things. So, from that minute on, you could see what they were thinking with their strategizing. They had to bring on media. They had to sort of tell this story about Charlie Teo. You can't tell a story about being a bad surgeon because there's too many good cases out there. So they had to bring on this story that Charlie Teo is a wolf. He's not Bambi at all. He's a terrible person. And so that's where the media was incredibly strategic and incredibly powerful in turning the narrative against me. So, it wasn't difficult. It was just after the hashtag Me Too. So, the journalists wrote in the newspaper that I kissed a nurse in the operating room and she felt uncomfortable. And so she didn't have to verify that. She just said it's alleged he kissed this nurse, and that was enough to sort of, make the public think, oh, shit, maybe he's not such a nice guy. Maybe he is a bit of a sexual predator. And then she came up with a story about how I was wearing nothing but Y fronts at one of my daughter's birthday parties. And the wording of the article was such that the birthday party was a daughter's birthday party. So I think people thought, a young kid's birthday party, maybe 9 years old or 10 years old. And, it's so inappropriate that he walks into the birthday party wearing a pair of Y fronts. Well, I've never owned a pair of Y fronts for a starter. And but she got the story because apparently one of my daughter's friends posted something on Instagram or Facebook of me at my daughter's 19th birthday party, which was a pool party, and I was wearing my Speedos. And so, it's like that's all she had to do was just sort of word it so that it seemed like I might have been a little bit of a creepy sort of guy.
Yeah.
And then Henry Wu comes along, and Henry Wu, I don't know what his beef is against me, but Henry Wu starts a website called Stop Charlie Teo. Now, you think that would be ethically and morally wrong to do that against a fellow surgeon, but he was a counsellor of the College of Surgeons at the time. He had no repercussions by doing it. In fact, if you looked at the followers on that website, Kate McClymont was one of them. The president of the College of Surgeons was another one. So, he had all these people following him on this website, and all he had to do was, again, allege that Charlie Teo is doing it for the money. So he said, there's 103 GoFundMe pages, asking for $100,000. This guy's charging $100,000 for an operation. Well, I know he must know that $100,000 for an operation is, covers everything, and that my portion of that was a very small portion. But again, all he had to do was, yell from the top of the mountain a few times that this guy's charging $100,000, and someone like Kate McClymont was going to pick up on it. Then he said that I was non-academic and I didn't publish my results. Well, again, all it would have taken is to do a PubMed search, and he would have seen that I've actually got an H index of 38, which is the highest H index of any neurosurgeon in Australia. And I've got 178 peer-reviewed journal articles. I've got 2 books. So to say I'm non-academic is exactly diametrically opposite to the truth, which is that I'm the most academic neurosurgeon in Australia. And then he went on and said all these other things. So we wrote a complaint to the College of Surgeons, to APRA, to HCCC. This guy is, morally reprehensible what he's doing. It's wrong. It would have taken one phone call to realize that he was telling untruths. And they, what they did? They wrote back to me and said, we've dismissed this case. We thought it was so unworthy of attention that we didn't even write to Henry Wu. It was summarily dismissed. And yet they've written to me. I mean, Paul knows now. In the last week, they've written to me saying that we need you to explain why you said that the COVID vaccine was dangerous. And in one of your podcasts, you said that the risk of the vaccine was greater in children than the actual having the disease. And we need an explanation. Well, fuck you. You didn't ask for Henry Wu for an explanation when he actually published untruths and generated a website. And yet you ask me to explain my stand on COVID when all I was doing was giving my opinion. I even preempted it by saying I'm not an expert. And so I just gave my opinion about, what I'd heard at a meeting and things like this. And it's a non-scientific forum. It's people have every right to give their opinion. And yet now I'm being dragged through the fucking courts by the governing bodies to justify why I made those statements. I mean, look, it's ridiculous. The public have no idea how Machiavellian, how evil, how prejudicial, how vexatious this whole and broken this system is. It's a broken system where, the plaintiff, the judge, the jury, and the executioner can all be one person. And that one person can be your competitor. It's like saying to Woolworths, okay, we want you to judge Coles. And if you've got any complaint against Coles, we want you to complain about Coles. Oh, and by the way, who's going to be the jury? Oh, you are. Well, Woolworths are going to be the jury. Oh, and who's going to determine the fine that they have to pay? Oh, you guys at Woolworths can define it. That's how bad the system is. I've been accused of these wrongdoings by my competitors, who then sit on the tribunal boards and judge me, and judge themselves. It gets even worse than this. Look, you won't even believe this one. I know I'm raving on, but let me tell you one story. One of those patients on the PSC, Professional Standards Committee, that they dragged up as a bad outcome. Okay, so that husband wrote a letter of complaint to the West Australian Medical Board saying, Charlie operated on my wife, the outcome was bad, but that's what I'm not complaining about. That I'm complaining about the fact that I could not repatriate my wife to Western Australia for weeks because of petulance, because the doctors, once they heard that Charlie Teo had operated, shut their doors and wouldn't listen to me. So it was a very legitimate complaint. The doctor who fielded that complaint then wrote back and said, oh, this is a legitimate complaint. Do you want me to take it further? And of course he goes, yes, you take it further. So this guy then fills out, his name's Jeff. He then fills out the form that takes the complaint, escalates the complaint to APRA or to a higher board. And guess who the West Australian representative on APRA is? It's fucking Jeff. So Jeff writes a letter to himself saying, please, do you think that this complaint needs to be escalated against Charlie Teo? And Jeff says to himself, oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That sounds like procedural fairness to me. That doesn't sound vexatious or frivolous at all. We've been seeing the same thing with Miley Trin, and other doctors. It is lawless. It is lawless. It is completely lacking in procedural fairness. The crime is to be accused. It's like modern day witchcraft. And you are, according to these guys, you're guilty until proven innocent, and there is no recourse. There is no, at the misdeeds of APRA, I put up the first slide was about the ombudsman, Rachel McClawson. They're asleep at the wheel, completely ineffectual. There's no oversight. There is no way to, so that they're a power into themselves, and there is no way to claw them back.
And they do it under the veil of the betterment of society. We're doing it to protect you guys. It's in the interest of public safety. So the S-150, I know, I'm sure you know what the S-150 is, but the S-150 is where anyone anonymous can make a complaint against you, and they then determine that if the complainant is legitimate, so they don't have to prove it's legitimate, they don't have to know the background story. If they think it's legitimate, they can immediately stop you from operating. They take your license off you, and then they have a certain amount of time for the hearing to be heard, so that you can plead your case and you can prove your innocence. So, in other words, Paul's right. You're immediately determined to be guilty. Then you've got to prove your innocence. Well, that whole process can sometimes take years. So at the end, they find them, you did nothing wrong. But it's 8 years of loss of income, loss of reputation, breakdown of family, mental health problems. And most people commit suicide. If they don't commit suicide, they leave medicine, or they stop doing what they do best, or they become jilted and they become it's terrible. And who's suffering at the end of the day? It's the Australian public who are suffering.
We've been following the stories of several doctors going through that. Dr. Borchos, who early on in COVID started offering exemptions, 3-month exemptions for people to get more research done on the vaccine, which was actually legal. He's been suspended ever since. Dr. Miley Trin, who their expert witness against her declared on the stand that Dr. Miley Trin actually saved this woman's life by giving her ivermectin, and yet that's their witness.
Michael, you can stand there all night and tell stories. There's not just them.
What I'm saying is,
I can list at least 10 neurosurgeons who are no longer operating or have killed themselves because of vexatious complaints, sham peer review. I can tell you about a surgeon who they wanted to get rid of him because he was too good and he was making them look bad. And so they had to come up with all these complications. Well, guess what? I reviewed those cases. Of the 12 complications they came up with, 6 of them belonged to the surgeon who was making complaints. So he had to make up complications, so he stuck his own patients in there.
Jeez.
Again, you'd never believe it. You just would never believe what could happen.
Do you think, though, that they stretch out these processes, make it public, not so much to attack you, but they are attacking you, but to control the rest of the other doctors? Look what we're doing to Charlie. He's a superstar. If we can do this to him, you don't stand a chance. So just shut up and do what you're told.
Well, look, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but you're absolutely right. It's had that effect. So the saddest thing about what's happened to me is not what's happened to me, because Paul's right. At least I can practice my trade in another country. The saddest thing that's happened to me is that I have seen on a daily basis patients who are not getting the care that they deserve because doctors are not willing to take any sort of risk now, because they say to themselves, fuck, if they can destroy Charlie Teo for simply giving a contrary second opinion, if they can destroy him for that, then they can destroy anyone. So we will not take that tumor out. We'll biopsy it. We get exactly the same money by biopsying it. So we'll biopsy it and we'll let the patient die prematurely, or we'll let the patient, get deficits. But we are not going to put ourselves at risk, because we know what happens when you do that. And remember, at the end of the day, what was I found guilty of? I was found guilty of 2 things: giving contrary second opinions and being overly optimistic in my consent. That's all they got me for. They didn't get me for anything else.
That's insane.
They didn't get me for technical, making bad decisions. They conceded that I'm a good surgeon. Even Kate McClymont has been heard in an interview saying he's a talented surgeon. So they could not get me for my surgical skills or my patient care. They got me for being overly optimistic and giving a second opinion that was contrary to an MDT from Melbourne, where a multidisciplinary team said that it was inoperable. They wanted me to say it was inoperable as well.
And Charlie, was your opinion over optimistic?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I am well known amongst my colleagues. So if you ask any of my colleagues overseas, what's Charlie Teo's, what's he really like? And the one thing they'll tell you, and many of my fellows from overseas have said, we learnt good neurosurgery, Charlie, but the thing we learnt most was how to talk to patients and consent patients. My whole narrative was, you've got to gloom patients. It's called glooming them. You've got to make sure they're fully aware of the repercussions if things go bad. You've got to make sure they understand these are the complications. You've got to make sure that you make no promises to them at all. And so, no, my consent process is absolutely honest to the T. It's absolutely well informed. It's comprehensive. The only error I made was that I don't record it. So basically, at the end of the day, remember, no patients have complained about me. Those 2 people, those 2 cases, their relatives complained about me. Those relatives weren't in the consent process. They weren't in the room. So, so now I know. And what I've done since the tribunal is I record all the interviews, so they can't accuse me of being flippant or being too optimistic about the consent process.
And that's, informed consent is something close to my heart, Charlie. I did the Lighthouse Declaration, and one of the 4 key points is informed consent. And I often summarize that as, you must tell the truth. What's happening is we've now got a profession that doesn't tell the truth to patients. Ever since the APRA gag order of 2021, where the whole profession was told, no, you can only tell half the story. You can talk about benefits, but you can't talk about risks. We had a systemic problem with informed consent, and To me, that was a massive tragedy, because I knew that if you take away truth and informed consent, you've undermined the ethics of the whole profession.
Oh, 100%. And
It's
for
still,
a governing body, for some person outside of that process to come in and judge you on your informed consent when it's so contextual, when it's so complex, when it's so personal, is so wrong. I mean, how can someone judge the way you've informed the patient when your job is to maintain hope, your job is to be to be respectful of their autonomy, your job is to treat every person as an individual. So some people's first language might not be English, some people's intellectual level may be not the same as others, some people's social network may not be as supportive of others. So you're putting all this information into your brain when you are consenting someone. So, for example, if you're going to operate near someone's speech area, for example, and they're a DJ or a shock jock on the radio, of course that's going to be more important in your consent process than someone who works on a factory line who actually doesn't speak at all to maintain his vocation. So all these little things go into how you inform someone of an operation and what you accentuate and what you underscore and what you sort of, concentrate on when you do a consent. And then for some outside body, not even a doctor, some bureaucrat sitting on a desk saying, oh, you didn't do it properly or you were too optimistic it's reductionist. It's trivializing the importance and the complexity of a consent process, and it's so wrong. It's so wrong.
I found that when I was a junior doctor, when I was a first-year registrar in anesthetics, I was much more tremulous about my consent. I was much more. I didn't give hope. I was like, because what I'm saying is when you're inexperienced and you're not very good, you're going to gloom, and it's probably appropriate that you gloom. After a decade, 2 decades of practice, I could convey hope and confidence that this was going to be all right, because by then I knew it was good. Not that you could guarantee that there was never going to be an adverse outcome, but you gain confidence. And I think the point is you had reason to be confident because you had the numbers. You could look, you could define in my hands, this is what the rate of success.
No. You know what they've done now? They have mandated that I don't tell the patients if I think a tumor is operable or not. I'm not even allowed to tell them that I think it's operable. I've got to hold my tongue and toe the party line. Then I've got to get permission of another doctor who's probably never even seen one of these cases. He's certainly junior to me. He certainly hasn't got my experience. I've got to get his permission to then say, can I please call it operable? And it's even worse than that, because guess what the standard treatment is? Best standard treatment, the Australian guidelines on the treatment for recurrent brain cancer is to first offer surgery. It's surgical resection followed by other things. And guess what? That's the case, and I'm not allowed to tell patients that I think your tumor is operable. It's
woke medicine, and it's go woke, go broke. Well, when I talked about informed consent being destroyed and how devastating I saw that, this wokeness, this change in our culture is the worst cancer. Because it's destroying merit, it's destroying innovation, it's destroying progress, and it's destroyed ethics. And then the guardians are these he, him, she, her, whatever woke bureaucrats who have no idea of what it is to practice medicine. And to bear that responsibility, like you say, the intricacies of not just doing the surgery, but like you say, communicating it in a way which is accurate, but doesn't take away hope from someone. So you're right; it's nuanced and it's difficult, but we're in this culture now. Before we got disconnected, I was asking about China. because I really worry about our culture and our ability to progress within medicine when you've got this. And I think we need to fix the system desperately. This idea that anyone, including your competitors, or can put in a anonymous complaint or even a non-anonymous complaint. No, it should be your patients. A complaint should arise from your care and what happens in your operating theatre or in your surgeon's office. You know, your surgery. It shouldn't apply to opinions you expressed, on social media. And the overreach is gobsmacking, and the fact that people don't understand that is what concerns me. And they don't understand how it's white-anting out our profession. It's creating a bunch of medical simps who cannot speak for their patients anymore. They cannot provide the opinion of what they think is right for their individual patient. It's very Big Brother.
And any scientist worth their salt, Paul, would know that you can interpret the literature any which way you like. And you'll always find an article that will support you. There's one article that says that margarine's bad for you. There's another article that says it's good for you. There's another article that, so, it's not, a lot of what we say to our patients is based on how we interpret the literature. And so it's not as if we're glibly saying something that has no scientific merit. We just say something that's our opinion. And, for example, to say that the vaccine is a gene therapy, well, it is a gene therapy. And that's what I've been dragged across the coals for. It is inserting messenger RNA so that it produces a spike protein. That's manipulating our genes. So it is gene therapy. And so why can't we say that? Why do you have to, why do you have to lie to the public and say that it's a standard old vaccine? It's not a standard old vaccine. Live attenuated viruses are standard old vaccines, but a messenger RNA vaccine is not standard.
No, I think it's completely supportable. And I was just saying that Senator Kennedy, his deputy, I think it's Jim O'Neill, did a tweet talking about gene-altering shots. These kinds of things. That's the Deputy Secretary of the HHS. There are papers that, and so much. If you wanted to litigate this, I think there is a lot of literature coming even from the manufacturers themselves that support those claims. But it's not about. These are attacks on free speech. They are clearly want to hide the truth of what's happened in the last few years, and that's very sinister. It's very sinister.
Yeah, and really, it's the same thing that's happened to me too. It's basically gagging someone who was very, very honest to his patients, whose results were good, and so they're saying to me now, Hang on. You told that patient the risk of surgery was only 5% of death or bad outcome. And yet this patient had a bad outcome, and our expert witnesses from Melbourne, who, by the way, have never done a brainstem glioma, but still in their hands, they said that the results, I should have considered the patient by saying there was a 70% chance of a bad outcome or or death. And so if you dissect that statement, yes, in their hands, it would have been 70% because they've never done a brainstem glioma before. But, Your Honour, can we please submit that Dr. Teo has the largest published series in the world of brainstem gliomas, and in that series, he published that his bad death outcome rate was 6%. Isn't it therefore fair that he tells a patient that his bad outcome death rate is 6%? No. You can't do that. You've got to tell them that the risk of surgery is 70%. Even if it's crazy.
It's crazy. Over the years when friends and family and even other colleagues asked me for advice, it happened to me. My mum had an aortic aneurysm some years ago, and it was the most scary thing. And I thought, That's a 5% mortality. Plus, you're replacing a bit of the aortic arch. And the first thing I did, I was very fortunate because I called the cardiothoracic pavilion. I got through to one of the anesthetists. I said, so who does a lot of this surgery? You know, oh, we're doing one now. We do 3 a day. There's Hughes. He was still operating back then. He was like, we do these all the time, and we get good results. I went, okay, that's good enough. I'll send it to Prince Alfred. At least you don't go to somewhere where they do one. They've never done one, or they do one a year. You go. If you're sensible, you will seek out the team that does it all the time and gets the best results. And that was the case with you. You did if you needed a brainstem glioma removed, you'd be silly to go, not to seek out someone who does it all the time and gets the best results. And the idea that they think it's okay to take that away as a choice from the public is frankly really rotten.
And if you speak to most human rights lawyers, they'll say that the process is broken and it's dysfunctional. And I know that there's been 2 Senate inquiries and 1 Royal Commission, and all 3 forums found the system was broken. That it's nepotism, it's job for the boys, it's there's no due process, that it doesn't follow basic human rights concepts, and something should be done about it. Both Senate inquiries did not lead to Royal Commissions, and the 1 Royal Commission, again, apparently the 1 Royal Commission came up with something like 128 recommendations, of which only 2 were ever met anyway. So what do you do about it? I saw one of the comments and one of the questions from one of your listeners is, how do we find an ethical doctor? How do we find a doctor that's going to tell the truth? How do we fix the system? Well, Paul, the worst thing about this whole forum and the way I'm jilted now is that I don't know it can be fixed. I don't know how to fix it. And how do you tell that person, how do you find someone who's going to tell the truth? Everyone is so gagged and so sort of worried and about persecution, about punitive damages, and about legal ramifications and being sued. And oh my gosh, just so they're just beating us into submission.
Yeah, when I finished medical school, I went to California and I did my elective term in Sacramento, and after that there were some excellent doctors, but I was looking at the system, the cover your ass medicine, very defensive and fearful, all unnecessary tests which cause morbidity. I actually was happy to come back to Australia. I thought at the time Australia had the best healthcare system in the world. It was my feeling, but how far badly we've fallen. And it really doesn't help. We have to get rid of this. The system, these laws were enacted over the last few years, that allows these inquisitions, allows these anonymous complaints of people who are not stakeholders, and the fact that they actually pursue them, which are really just effects to chill the free speech of practitioners. It's out of the bounds of their authority, and my regret was that I didn't get the opportunity to push so far the lawlessness and the overreach of what's going on. So if you say what's the solution, the first thing is that we have to reform the system, and we do need to get back to a much more sane way of protecting the public, because this isn't protecting the public. What's going on?
No,
it's destroying excellence. It's destroying care. It's designed to censor and prevent free speech in the doctors, and it's not allowing doctors to be doctors. It's putting the government or the FSMB, some centralized medical board playing the strings of all the medical boards and regulatory bodies. And when our care is outsourced to them, you're not getting the best care. Your best care is with a doctor who, or practitioner who knows you and care, is trying to navigate the best result for you, not something that's mandated from on high. And I used to love the idea that medicine was an art. I love the fact that there was an art of medicine and there was leeway to make improvements, and I don't see that in this environment.
Yeah,
I think it's completely stifled. I love that you did minimally invasive neurosurgery. One of the things I did discover from all those years in the operating theatre was whenever you could do things with smaller cuts and minimally invasive, you got better results, you got faster recovery time. Even with hip replacements, I worked with a surgeon who did sort of smaller cuts, minimally invasive approach to hip replacements, and we were getting these people up, walking in recovery, and some of them went home the following day. And I was like, we could almost do day stay hip replacements. And I'm thinking about what you're doing now with Cingulum. It's almost like with the transmagnetic cranial stimulation and the functional MRIs, it's almost like an extension of this minimally invasive.
Yes, it is.
You're doing non-invasive. Well, it's not brain surgery, but it's almost non-invasive brain surgery. And I find it fascinating. I wanted to ask you about that because I noticed on the website at Cingulum, I think it's cingulumhealth.com.au.
Cingulum Health, yeah.
It's you talk about being able to treat functional neurological problems. So as opposed to structural, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the basic premise is that there's a lot of doctors who treat brain problems but don't have any means of objectively testing the brain or assessing whether their intervention is working. And so I'm talking about neurologists, psychologists, neurologists who treat a lot of patients who have functional problems. In other words, their brain's not working well, even though it might look normal on a structural scan. So these poor buggers have been practicing medicine for the last few centuries without any means of assessing their patients objectively. No blood test, no imaging test. But thankfully, some very smart people came up with a scan called a resting state functional connectome guided scan that basically can now show you a picture of how someone's brain's working. And it divides the brain up into these things called parcels. So it parcellates the brain into about 389 parts. And if one of those parts or one of those parcels is overactive or underactive compared to a normal person's brain, and it turns out that parcel is in an area of the brain that is responsible for the symptoms that patient has, for example, depression, then that parcel can be manipulated with a very, very non-invasive intervention called transcranial magnetic stimulation. And so what we've done is we've utilized that functional map and scanned patients with, say, depression, anxiety, head injury, schizophrenia, autism, all these conditions where they have normal structural scans. We can see that they've got all these abnormal areas of function. And by changing the parameters of the magnet, you can either stimulate or inhibit. And so if an area is overactive, we inhibit it. If an area is underactive, we stimulate it, and we correct these functional anomalies in the brain and get fantastic results. The results are so good, in fact, that a couple of Harvard graduates read the papers that we produced and wanted us to duplicate the clinic that we have in Sydney in America. So we've opened in America now. We've just opened in Switzerland, and hopefully we're going to be opening clinics around the world using this technology to treat people with brain problems that are functional and not structural.
Yeah, no, there's a comment, electric shock. No, it's not electric shock. It's it's you're putting on a helmet that has magnets, and you can.
Yeah, it's an external magnetic field. So it works on the principle that a strong magnetic field can influence an electrical field or a biorhythm, and it does it beautifully. Yeah.
I was going to ask you if it would understood depression and anxiety, but I was going to ask you if it had efficacy in autism, in improving autism. So I was interested that you said that, and again, it makes perfect sense. So you see, something good has come from the shit that you're pioneering this even more minimally invasive brain treatment.
Yes.
And we've got to trust that we've got to. I think it's about motivation for me. I think you talked about people who are frankly evil. They tend to project, like you said, their mind and their thinking but I think if you have the right motivation, and the one thing that got me through not going crazy with everything was I knew why I was doing it, and I understood my motivation, and I trusted that.
Yes.
And I was just going to say, I watching your recent interviews, I didn't get it at first, and then I went, okay, yeah, Charlie's the same. You have to trust your motivation, and this is what allowed you, I think, to continue on and to make these innovations and continue to help people around the world in a system which in Australia, as you said, has just gone deeply dysfunctional. And God help us.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. On a more big picture frame, I mean, look, when one door closes, another opens, and the old saying that it'll all make sense one day, and what will be will be. I must say, I'm not quite at the stage where I'm thanking Kate McClymont and my colleagues for doing what they did, but one day I hopefully will rise above it all and say thank you, because if it wasn't for you, yes, you're right, I would not have been able to put as much time or effort into developing this Singulum clinic. I treated a 25-year-old girl a few years ago with targeted TMS for depression, and she was suicidal. She'd been bedridden for 2 weeks, homebound for 6 months, and now she's not on any medication. She's cured. And I thought to myself at the time, hang on, that was as good as taking out a brain tumor, but without any risk. And if it wasn't for the evil that has put me in this position, I would not have been able to do that. So, yeah, look, the good thing is that if your aim is to help people, and it was, because when I stopped operating, I thought to myself, I still have this passion to help people. How am I going to do that and not do neurosurgery? And of course, one thing led to another. So if your passion is to help people and contribute to society, then you are going to find a way to do that, hopefully.
And the current state of play is they'll go to the doctor, they'll check off a set of symptoms, they'll see how it fits in with the DSM manual, and then they'll prescribe a pill. It's not based on. It just seems so much more sensible what you're doing by actually measuring and mapping the brain function.
Yeah, because it's not. I mean, the gold standard for depression, of course, is ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, but that has its, ethical problems, its risk, it damages brain cells, it has to be done under general anesthetic, and the list goes on and on and on. And so, if you're not going to use CBT, or if you want to use some sort of intervention somewhere between CBT, SSRIs and ECT, TMS is the perfect intervention because it's very low risk. In fact, there's virtually no risk to it. It's not as interventional as ECT, but it's more interventional than CBT, for example, cognitive behavioural therapy. So it's the perfect compromise.
And you've got a foundation researching brain cancer.
Yeah, look, they tried to destroy that too. A lot of people were called up, including the CEO of the foundation, by this terrible journalist. to try and find dirt on the foundation. Thank God the CEO of the foundation was a lawyer, so it was squeaky clean. All the I's were dotted, T's were crossed, and they couldn't find one thing that we did wrong. And so the foundation has survived, but sadly, again, because of our wokeness and our PC, a couple of our corporate sponsors that were donating a lot of money, like almost $1 million a year, pulled out because of all the negative media. But other really good people, a lot of high net worth friends of mine have stayed true to me and loyal to me, and the foundation is still going strong. It's called the Charlie Teo Foundation. I'm really proud of it. We are very transparent with the money that we raise and the money that we spend. Our P&Ls are published every quarter with no spin to it. Our overheads are kept well below 20%, which is world's best. We try and find out-of-the-box disruptive thinkers, because it turns out historically that many of the advances in cancer research have been made by not the big universities, but by these, very, very smart but poorly funded disruptive thinkers. And so we've made it our job to go around and try and find those people to try and find a cure for brain cancer. So yeah, look, I'm proud of the foundation, Paul. Thanks for bringing it up, and I'm very, very proud of Singulum.
I'm wondering if you're angry. I mean, there are times I get. I over the last 3 years, I have got angry. I mean, there's been times I've been rocking in my chair saying Nuremberg, Nuremberg. I really just there are times I've been angry, but predominantly now I don't look to the courts. I don't look to anything. I believe in karma. I believe in cause and effect, and I think that people that are doing harm and doing evil will face the consequences. This is what part of why I mentioned motivation. You talk about motivation, and to me, everything starts with motivation. If you've got the right motivation, you've got the opportunity to really make a change. And if you don't, it doesn't matter how clever you are or how good you are or how much money you have. The results, I've discovered, turn to shit. So now I'm not so angry. But how about you?
Well, look, in a public forum, I always try and leave a positive message and try not to be angry, because it's a very negative frame of mind. It takes up a lot of energy. And so, of course, it's better to be positive, happy, and content. But the sad truth is that no matter how positive a person I am and how happy a person I am, you just keep getting knocked down, Paul. Like this latest complaint from the medical council, for example, I mean, no matter how you keep climbing up and, I'm going to get over this, I'm pretty happy, but then bang, they knock you down again. And
it's a weapon, isn't it? It's a weapon. They say on their letters, oh, look, we're aware that this may cause you distress and you may need to get legal work. And here's your assistance number if you're distressed. They know that they're using a weapon
yes.
to enforce compliance
yes.
with whatever, big pharma,
yes.
and they have this has to change. This has to change. This and this has been my life's work since I left. I do miss medicine. I mean, I see your passion and I rejoice that you're still able to work. Maybe I'll have to go overseas too, but yeah, the systemic problems do. It's great to at least air that. And I do trust that the tide is turning, and that people will see that this insane, woke, vindictive, manipulative, corrupt um, setup that we have now, its days are numbered.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Look, I try and be philosophical. I met a guru when I was in India who I spent a few days with, and he helped me sort of get rid of some of that anger and that melancholia and the rumination of waking up every day and thinking about how unfairly I'd been treated. But the truth be known is that, it's very, very hard. It's very, very hard, and I don't wish it upon anyone. I wish, and all credit to you, because I hate to say it, Paul, but you're fighting a terrible battle. And but good on you, because you've got to maintain. If it wasn't people like you, of course, the system would never change. Because I remember once at an interview, someone said to me, "How would you like to be remembered, or what would you like to do before you die?" And I normally would say, find a cure for brain cancer. But on this occasion, I said, I'd like to change the system so that people like me who actually care and love their patients can continue caring and loving their patients and treating them well. And, this whole broken system where people who all they've got to do is be disruptive thinkers or step outside the box and they're going to be persecuted. I would like to change that. And, but, I'm not changing. I've resigned almost to the fact that they've won. But people like you, I really, really respect, because, you need that positive optimism to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and good on you for seeing that.
Charlie,
I personally can't see it,
Charlie, my dad grew up as a teenager in Nazi-occupied Holland 80 years ago. The last fourth turning cycle of madness that humanity went through. And he and my uncle helped, forge essentials worker documents so that people wouldn't get dragged off the street to the factories in Germany. And they engaged in acts like, putting up posters of general strikes and stuff that would get you shot if you're found. These were not trivial things. So I sort of feel like I've got it hardwired into me that one of my jobs is to fight tyranny. I feel like
it's in your genes. It's in your DNA.
I was born to fight tyranny, and I see tyranny most vile. And look, I'm sure my dad, when he was a teenager and he could have got shot a number of times, but both he and my uncle, they survived and they were very lucky. But they never regretted that. I think that's my new job. Professional stir, and that's my new job, to fight tyranny, and actually do it with great joy. I do it with great joy, and just like my dad as a teenager would have thought, this is over. The Nazis they're going to be here forever. They're going to be in control forever. No, it did end, and I have the same faith that it will end. And in the meantime, we'll continue to shit stir and reveal with love, reveal the truth.
Yep. Good on you, Paul. You're a good man.
You're very kind to me, very, very kind. It's very humbling, Charlie, because you're a great man, and hats off to you. And thank you for coming on the show tonight. Is there anything else we should touch on?
No, you've been lovely. Great questions. And I'm sorry I got carried away there. I do get a bit carried away a little bit, and the anger comes out, and I shouldn't. But it is what it is.
I didn't realize you were a black belt in karate.
Yeah. No. I worked as a bouncer all through university. I actually earned more money as a bouncer than I did as a young doctor. Yeah, because my first year as a resident at Concord Hospital was $11,000 a year. That was my salary. And I was earning, way above that in cash as a bouncer at Centrepoint Tower. Yeah.
And you still got the guns on you, so you can.
No, I still keep fit. I mean, I think it's my responsibility to my patients. A lot of my operations are long, arduous, physically taxing operations, and it's in their best interest that I'm fit, and so I don't rush to surgery. And so, I keep very fit. Yeah.
Impressive, Charlie. Well, thank you for my brush with fame and
Infame. Your brush with infamy.
well, I like, when I do the public talks, I say, Dr. Paul Oosterhuis, I'm a deplorable anti-vax cooker. I wear it. I wear it with pride. I don't escape it, and I embrace it. And I say my pronouns are I told you so. And and I tell you, look, we didn't get a chance to do this, but one of my big things was early treatment. Talking about early treatment. So I'll bless you in the name of the holy horse paste, the hydroxy, the vitamin D, the zinc, the quercetin, and the mysterious melatonin. God bless you.
I would like to say that as my last statement. Let me say this, that I used to be one of those doctors. I don't want you to think that I'm standing on a pedestal saying that I've never, ever been a sheep. I would toe the party line. I strongly believe in vaccines. I thought that everyone was obeying the Hippocratic Oath. I used to be one of those doctors. Now that my eyes have been opened and I've started going to meetings like ACNAM, where I see all these integrative doctors who are truly doing things for the best interests of their patients, I realized that my education was incredibly blinkered. And now my eyes are being opened by, enlightened doctors, good doctors, brave doctors who have actually fought the system and realized that, what we learned at medical school was just the tip of the iceberg. So that's my last statement. My last statement is that you've got to find one of those integrative GPs because they're enlightened, they're brave, and they will do the right thing by you.
Yeah, we've had Professor Ian Bright-Hope on the show many times.
Oh my God, what an amazing man!
Professor Robin Cosford and
my God, they're all amazing.
Our community is aware of them, and we have to do more. You're right; they're just fantastic.
Yeah.
We've got Sally Price in Western Australia. I met her. She's one of the Lighthouse. One of the things I did is the Lighthouse Declaration, along with Rosneelan Cook and Robert Brennan, who was the second doctor suspended for breaching the gag orders in 2021. And it's not making a technical argument. It's just about ethics. Can we end the censorship? That includes the lawfare. Can we have informed consent, which is tell the truth, which is what we've been talking about with you two. Bodily autonomy, which is the right to say no. Control what happens to your body, and to get these other third parties, wherever they are, whether it's the FSMB in Texas pulling the strings of all the medical councils and that, wherever they are, we don't want them. That's not how you get good health. Get a direct relationship with your practitioner, and get back to letting doctors be doctors.
Yeah.
So that would be my concluding remarks. So that's the lighthousedeclaration.org, and anyone can sign it. It's just those principles. If you agree with those principles, go ahead, sign the declaration. And it was also an attempt to end the divisiveness, because we're just saying, hey, can we agree to those principles? If you don't, that's fine. We don't want anything to do with you because you're frankly unethical or bought but that's all. That's all. So yeah, we would love to have you as a lighthouse keeper, Charlie.
That's lovely. That's lovely. It would be my honor.
Then I've done my job.
Okay, Paul, lovely. Thank you very much.
All right, I think we've got some song.
When I met Jesus Christ, he was almost 10 years old, and he was helping his mother push a trolley full of all they owned. And because they couldn't find an inn they could get in, they were heading to the city and leaving Bethlehem. Couldn't you perform a miracle? I'm out of them, he said. like turning nothing into warmth, but it just made my mother cry. It just made my mother cry. Mary Magdalene has become a man, and tonight he's old, and she has been riding my tram. Now it's late and she's trying to sleep beneath a poster for a bank. Your dreams are important to us as it bathes her face in gold. Come give us your natural gifts. We make wealth from toil. Come pretend for history's page that we're advancing Australia fair. Let's pretend that we're all advancing Australia fair. Back down the road I found the church we built on the black man's bones was empty, and out the front a sign read all but sold. A sign read all but sold. And we all owe so much money, but to whom we're not quite sure. So hey,